is an author. He speaks and he writes. I just said author, so writes the same thing on politics, government, science, a lot of different subjects. And he joins us now from Idaho, I believe is where James calls home. James, Dr. James Payne, welcome to our program.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Tim.
Do we call you James, Jim, or Doctor, or Doc? What do we call
Jim is fine.
Jim? Okay. But now you are a doctor. I do want to give you credit. What's your doctorate in?
I'm a political scientist. My PhD is from University of California at Berkeley. And for 20 years I taught at different institutions, Yale, Wesleyan, Johns Hopkins, and Texas A&M.
Now, when did you go to Berkeley?
When it's 62, doctorate is in 65.
Now, political science at Berkeley, that in the 60s, that was a pretty
left wing.
Yeah, okay, left wing, to say the least.
Oh yes, very much. And I guess I started and I went to I don't know if you ever heard the name of Oberlin College in Ohio, which is an undergraduate institution, and that's also a very left-wing liberal institution. And so I did come out of both of those with a very much sort of pro-government bias, you would say.
Now you're a self-described libertarian, is that right?
The word I use, libertarian is close, is voluntarist, which is the libertarian is kind of interested in politics and running for offices and so forth and changing laws, which is fine and needs to be done. But my feeling is I want to be more kind of useful on a day-to-day basis. So I'm active in voluntary groups, and I urge people and so forth to support them, and I try to strengthen them with various tactics and so forth, because I believe in the long run we've got to move away from government and relying on government to solve problems. And I think these voluntary groups are the much more efficient, effective problem-solving institutions.
Well, I'm just curious. By the way, what is do you write and post your writings on the web?
I do not do much on the web. It's we can get into that. I have certain skepticism about the electronic media and how deep it is and so forth. I'm writing books. Is I suppose my main.
Okay.
I've done about 22 of them now, and articles in magazines that do get picked up on the internet.
Well, given your what you just described, your skepticism of, I guess, or your belief that we need to move as Americans away from dependency on government and to be more independent and less dependency, i.e. more freedom, I think is what you're getting at. How do you see where we are? I mean, we were just talking last hour about the disaster that is the Affordable Health Care Act, i.e. Obamacare, in many different respects. You know, the website doesn't work. Nobody knows how to fix it, doesn't seem. People are getting the insurance cancellation letters that President Obama said would not happen. He said they could keep their insurance if they wanted to under his law, but we're seeing that's not accurate. And so, I mean, you look at the size of the scope of the federal government today. Obamacare takes it to a whole new level. We're not going in the right direction, it doesn't seem to me, according to your philosophy.
Right. Oh, no, this is...
at least on a national level. Maybe on a state level, there's a lot of good things happening around the country.
Well, I don't think so either.
Well, lay the pessimism on us. Go right ahead.
Well, it's not pessimism. What happens is government is an institution that's seen from afar, and it's actually one way I've described it is it's the institution that faraway people turn to think that they are solving faraway problems. So that if you hear like somebody's not being paid enough money, over there in California or something's working on it, so you say, well, gee, that's wrong. And there ought to be a law saying you got to pay so much amount of money, minimum wage legislation. So you sit back in your couch and go back to watching TV and you think you've solved the problem. Well, it turns out what wages are and what they should be in each employment situation, it's very different. There are just tens of thousands of different employment situations where the proper wage is different, and in many cases the proper wage should be much lower than what seems like at first glance a fair wage. For example, if you were hiring a crippled person that really wasn't able to do much work, and you were doing it mainly to do him and his family a favor, minimum wage wouldn't apply, right? And everybody agrees with that, but they don't think of that exception when they think about the law because they're too far away from it. So this is the trouble, and Obamacare is just another one of these things that you think from far away. You say, well, people can't afford their medical bills, or their medical bills are too high. We want to help them. So, at first glance, you say, oh, well, let's have a government program saying let's make medical care affordable. But as it winds out into each particular thing and so forth, you find all these problems and errors and so forth. So that, the whole idea of using this faraway, coercion-based institution, bureaucratic institution to solve our problems is fundamentally unsound.
Well, Jim, tell us about your book. I know it's just coming out this week, called Take Me to Your Government, Four Fables about the current mess we're in. Right.
Well, this is exactly. Let me briefly describe what it is. It's actually, if you've ever heard of Gulliver's Travels, it's sort of on that line. It's
right.
The Princess Navina is the 70-year-old princess from this hypothetical country of Pancratica, and she is being taken on a world tour to visit other countries to learn things so that she can become a better ruler. And so she visits some pretty crazy countries, and the whole thing is set up to try to expose sort of fundamental fallacies that we have going here in our assumption about institutions. For example, the first one, she visits a country called Malvolia. And the reason why it's called that is the rulers have deep down just automatic premise. Their whole premise of their whole life and tradition has been to harm people. That is, in fact, their slogan is the greatest misery for the greatest number. That's what they're trying to achieve. And so you say, well, what policies would you come up with if you wanted to kind of wreck a country? And needless to say, they resemble the kinds of things we seem to have stumbled into. For example, the basic one here is if you give this ruler, he wants to destroy people's morale and motivation, keep them from working, keep them from being happy and constructive and productive. So he has a program of giving them cash benefits if they're unemployed and unhappy and distressed. These are called negamos. And it's his policy, which he deliberately adopts, I say, to make people unhappy, and it works. I mean, he keeps them unemployed, and they have low morale, and suicide rates and alcoholism and stuff are up. Well, of course, that's exactly what our handout programs that we have, like food stamps and so forth, are doing. And so it's trying to make you, provoke you to, it's to provoke debate and discussion on...
I'm looking, Jim, at the cover. And it's really, this is a delightful cover to the book. Did you write this intentionally for young people, students, to help them grasp, or are you just using the fable as a means of driving home these points for everyone?
Both. It's at all levels. I think it's, as you notice thumbing through it, it's got a lot of drawings in there, cartoon-type drawings that are a lot of fun. and it can be enjoyed. You could read it to your 6 or 8-year-old. But there are a lot of very sophisticated points. Some of them, I think, go over the heads of college professors even. In fact, there's, among other things, there's a cryptogram in there that you can solve, and when you solved it, you've made a few points and so forth. So it's for everybody. But yeah, my kind of main marketing effort right now is to kind of mid-teens college people as a source of debate. And on the website for it, we have a whole list of sort of essay discussion questions that it provokes. And like the first one on there is, does the welfare state actually help or hurt people? I mean, that's a basic question you've got to face and debate.
That's a good question because, and it's very difficult to sort out sometimes because you have, for example, let's take welfare programs. I'm talking about from a Christian perspective, which is, we're a Christian organization, so we would try to discern what's right according to the scriptures in terms, if you have principles that apply to whatever it is. In this case, you're talking about helping people with welfare. I say helping people with quotations because there's a big question mark there, as Jim just said. And so on the one side, Jim, you get people, and I would fall into this camp more or less, would say, what you're doing is you're creating dependency among people so that they're going to, not want to work because you're paying them and they're not having to work. Okay. So then the other side of that argument would say to me, you're a cold, heartless person who don't care. You don't care about people because you want them to starve. So because they can't find a job or they can't work or they're some reason why they're in the situation they're in, and you don't even want to help them with a simple little amount of money a month. So how do you find out? How do you deal with that dilemma?
Well, you put the dilemma very well, and it just so happens I wrote a whole book on this.
Okay.
Called it came out about 10, 12 years ago, called Overcoming Welfare. And the basic analysis or point of view is there are two ways to see that. You're right. The principle that we should help our fellow man, that's absolutely certain. Okay, we're not questioning that. But there are two ways to approach helping others. And one is called sympathetic giving, which is the handout idea. In other words, you feel sorry for this person, so you give them what they appear to lack. The other is I call expectant giving, in which you say, well, I'm going to expect improvement from you because you want to raise this person up. You don't want to keep them in the same unhappy state they are. So if, say, take a beggar's on the street. If you give him money, you are reinforcing his pattern of sitting there on the street in the cold and suffering and being a beggar. Okay? In other words, you're encouraging that. You're making him more of a beggar by paying him to be a beggar, really. So the way to deal with the beggar is to say, would you like to carry my suitcase to the station and I'll give you $1? Okay, that's expectant giving. In other words, I'm going to give you this because I'm expecting you to, in this case, carry the suitcase. And so if you have whatever person you're trying to help, and it'll be different in every case, you form an expectation of what do I want to see the person do. Now, it may be like I want to see them study French, okay, or I may want to see them take a trip to Europe, okay. There's just thousands of, depending on the individual case, what you should ask of them in return for the kind of assistance you're giving. And that is the philosophy. And I think really the Christian, you must know Marvin Olasky,
yes,
who edits World. He's a good friend of mine, and we work together a lot on the welfare thing, and he likes my welfare book a lot and so forth. That's I would say, the Christian position on this, that yes, you step in to help, but you invent systems that the person participates and climbs out of whatever problem they're in.
And a lot of, don't you think, and Ray, maybe you want to comment on this as a pastor, a lot of like charity that the Bible speaks about